So a client sent me this track and it has a couple of problems. The reason this track sounds amateur is because it's missing some of the fundamentals. It's muddy, the kick and bass sounds like a big mess, and the entire track feels a little bit static. It feels like he had a great idea but kinda got stuck in a loop. So in this video, I want to show you how I went from this to this. We actually ended up releasing this track as part of a 2-track EP, and also I made a mixing spreadsheet which you can download for free below this video, so you know exactly what to do at every step of mixing your own tracks. So we will start with mixing the low end, because if your low end doesn't sit right, it will destroy your entire mix. So the low end of this track had a couple of problems. Let's start first of all with the kick. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this kick, except the fact that it sounds a little bit muddy. This is a character house kick, but I wanted to make something a little bit different. So actually, I added a little bit of a click on the exact same kick, so it sounds like this. It's the exact same kick, it has the exact same low end, except the fact that I swapped the click to a different sound. Now, if you want to learn how to do that, I do have a video on my channel that's showing exactly the entire process, and you can watch it up there. Now, the sub of this track had a couple of problems, and one of them is phase cancellation. That's when the kick, which is a bass instrument, and the sub are just clashing with each other. Imagine if you're trying to sit two people on the same chair, there's just not enough space. So the same with the sub. Just look at the analyzer and see what's happening to the kick when the sub is playing. It just sounds all over the place. So let's mute that. I took the same notes and I actually created the same bass, but I chopped it a little bit more so it's a bit more rhythmic. Notice that in the original sub, the note is crossing the kick, whether my note is ending just before the kick, to make sure that it doesn't clash with the transient. Everything sounds super clean. I made this bass in Vital, so it's a square wave with a filter that is controlled by this envelope. We also have saturation with the same envelope controlling the filter. I have here a note at D0. I also added a little bit of amp saturation and a little bit of EQ to roll off the low frequency. This is on linear phase mode, by the way. So reason number one why your track sounds amateur is because of muddy low end. Now, most producers think that adding more layers for the basses will make it more powerful, but usually this brings more problems. Because if you just stack sounds together, it can cause phase issues and it can sound inconsistent and muddy. But in this case, my client decided to add a bass layer, so this is how you should approach it. So first of all, you can see that we have the same problem where some of the notes are overlapping the kick. So I decided to chop them like this. Second, we have a bass note here that is overlapping with our kick. Let's play that together. It does interfere with a kick. You might think that this is really subtle, but when you have a lot of these elements that adds up, it's why your mix sounds messy and muddy. So first of all, I wanted to reshape the sound a little bit. So I took this plugin. It looks a little bit complicated, but you really don't have to use this one. You can do everything I did here with just the stock Ableton plugins. First of all, I added a cabinator. This is an amp, and I cut a bit of the low frequencies, so it has this effect. So it's just pushing it a little bit further in the mix. It's cutting a little bit of the low frequencies, and it's also making it a little bit wider. I also added another filter just to cut some of the lower frequencies. Those frequencies were just not necessary. They were probably also clashing with my bass. Then I added Fuser, and this is a sidechain plugin that is assigned to my kick. So basically this plugin is listening to the kick, and then it's removing those frequencies which clash with the kick. You can literally see the kick frequencies being removed right there. And I also added another EQ to cut more of the low frequencies. Now we have the bass line, which sounds so much cleaner. So this was before. And this is after. So reason number 2 why your track sounds amateur is because of bass layering. You always have to be really careful with that nothing is clashing. Now let's move on to point number 3. Don't worry, I will get to the vocals, but first we need to sort out the fundamentals. So one major problem I see with most music producers that joining my course is that their percussions feel static. Now, no one wants to listen to the exact same percussion loop for the entire track. So here are a few things that you can do to breathe some life into your drums. So I think that the track started with this clap. It's a really good clap, but it wasn't enough for me. And I really like the high frequency quality of it, so I wanted to isolate them with an EQ. And then I wanted to have a snare which has a little bit more body. So I added this one. They complement each other so nicely. But it wasn't enough because I wanted to add a bit more oomph, a bit more body, a bit more weight to it. So I added this perk. I also did a little bit of EQ, as you can see, just to kind of isolate the character of the sound. And I added another one, which again, just filling in the empty spaces, and it sounds like this. I will also remove all the layers one by one, so you can actually hear what each element is doing, what each layer is doing. Okay, this is good, but there is a little bit more processing you need to do to really bring this to life a little bit more. But before I show you that, I want to show you the same process that I did with the hat. Just a shaker. I always like to layer shakers with open hats. Nice one. And I wanted to have also a closed hat to add a little bit more to the click of the sound. You can really hear how each layer has its own role within this same sound. And then I wanted to make this a bit more airy. Now this hat had a very prominent transient, so I used a soft clipper to just cut the transient. Soft clipper is like you take scissors and you just cut the transient. It's just a really good way to create more headroom in your track. The difference in volume is inaudible, but actually, if you look at the meter, we have gained almost 10 dB. So I also added an EQ to just cut some annoying frequencies, to remove some of the low frequencies as well. And then, most important is to put a tiny, tiny reverb on your hat to put it in a little space. So now if I add the clap, first of all I use Soothe 2 is this a very quick way to just cut some of those harsher frequencies. What do we have here? I put a little bit of amp on the snare. Saturation is such a good way to add warmth to your sounds. Now, let me know in the comments if you would like to see a full breakdown of how to use saturations in your track, and I'll be happy to do a whole video about it. Just write in the comment below. Also here I added crispy clip to just chop a little bit of the transient of the snare. Also here added a little bit of reverb. This reverb actually has quite a lot of contrast to the hat because they're both playing quite close together. And then I did mid-side EQ. Mid-side EQ is when you EQ the mid frequencies and the side frequencies separately. I will do a proper video on that on my channel, so if you want to see that, just again leave a comment below and I will show you exactly how I work. But this technique is so important to make your track sound wide and spacious. So why do I have so many layers to my sounds? That's because in certain parts of the track, I just took away some of the elements. So this part, I wanted to tone things down a little bit. So you can see that I removed 2 layers of the clap and 2 layers of the hat. But here I wanted full energy. You can actually notice that I even removed some of the bass frequencies here, the layers, and that really helps to remove some energy and add energy so your track doesn't feel too static. Remember, if you want to have a boost of energy, you need to have a little bit of a quiet part before that. It's like the quiet before the storm, right? Few more layers that I have here is this little shaker. There's also this drum fill and these little hi-hats that just add a bit more interest. So reason number 3 why your track sounds amateur is because your percussions are too static. Oh, and by the way, I don't really care if you subscribe to my channel, but I would really appreciate if you shared this video if you enjoyed it. So thanks in advance. So where was I? Right. So one of the reasons most producers get stuck in the loop and the track feels a little static is because there is no shift in energy from one part of the track to the next. So listen to the original track. Other than that little vocal in the background, there isn't something that drives the energy forward. So I wanted to add some sort of a lead element that will move everything forward in this part. I added this. Let me show you how I did it. So I have this synth here, which is basically just playing these series of notes. It's nothing spectacular. I don't think I've even put a lot of effort into thinking which exactly notes, except the fact that it's starting on D and finishing on D just in a descending order. Right, so just a massive delay. Then I recorded that into audio and added a little bit of a fade, so we left just with the feedback of the delay. And then I added a couple of effects. So I added one effect. It's called Decimate, but it works exactly the same if you searched for Redux. Right, this little plugin. Does this sound familiar to you? Right, it does that effect. So basically, I just use a different plugin that does it. And you can look at the automation that I did here and how it's ending in the adding the pitch shifting effect. It really adds to that transition. This is one of my favorite transitions in the track. Amazing. I also added a Pro and B. Because this sound is quite dynamic, the frequency moved from high to low, I only wanted to compress this range of frequencies. Now, if you're not sure how a compressor works, then watch that video up there and you will understand exactly how to use a compressor, what exactly it does, why to use it, and how to use multi-band compression to make your tracks sound loud and powerful and clean. Few more little sounds that I added in terms of lead, all coming from the same synth, is all of these little bits. Yeah, so you can notice how I played a little bit with the automation to add a little bit of delay and make sure that I cut it quite a lot. You can see all of the automation here, right? Some on the delay, some on the phaser, some opening the filter, some closing the filter, etc. Again, if you want me to make a video about automation, explaining everything that you need to know about it to add movement and make your track feel lively and exciting, then just leave a comment below. So reason number 4 why your track sounds amateur is because of the energy flow from one part to the other. Now let's move on to the exciting part, which is the vocals. So if your vocals sound unpolished, it will affect your entire track, even if you have the most amazing flow throughout. It's like having an amazing view, but looking at it from a dirty window. So no matter how you look at it, the dirt is always ruining your view. So most producers either drown the vocals with effects, which make them sound unclear and even distorted, like actually in this case. I don't know what exactly he added on top, but I'm pretty sure it didn't sound like that when he downloaded it from Statice. And then there is the other case where people leave the vocals too dry because they're afraid of making edits that will make the vocal sound worse. In this case, the vocal needed some reshaping before we added some effects. So we need to fix the harsh S and clean up a little bit the mud. So let me show you exactly what I did. So first of all, I have these vocals which do kind of a question and an answer. You can hear how harsh it is. So what I did first of all is just adding some mid-side EQ to cut some of the harsher frequencies, clean a little bit of the mud. You can hear that it's a little bit more toned down. Then I added a multi-band compression just to make sure that I control the boominess of the sound. If you listen just to these frequencies here, yes, it's quite subtle, but it's cleaning up the boomy of the vocal, the boominess of the vocal. Then I added a fuzzer, and that is just to cut some of the frequencies and clean them up. Essentially, this does the exact same thing as Soothe does. So it sounds a little smoother. And then I added a little bit of reverb to put it in a nice space. Amazing. On this sound, I just added a little bit of redux or the decimate. It's the same effect I showed you before with the lead, with the pitching down effect. It's just this. Nice, it's just making it sound a little crunchier, which I really liked. And then I had this sound, which was really interesting because it did add quite a lot to the track in terms of shifting the energy forward.
Rise again. Rise again. Rise again. Rise again.
So it sounds really good, but it was missing something for me. So you can, again, you don't have to use this plugin. I just like to use it because it makes my life so easy. But you can use all of these effects within Ableton, within the stock Ableton plugins, because it's just filters, right? So first of all, I added a filter. This is a bandpass filter, which just kind of like moves from side to side. The advantage here is that I can make it move from the left to the right. You can do that with an LFO in Ableton. I'm not sure if you can move it from left to right though. You can use actually an autopan and a filter to do that.
Rise again. Rise again. Rise again.
Yeah, it's quite subtle, but it kind of moves a little bit like that. Then I added another filter, does exactly the same thing, but with a high pass and a little bit of drive, again, adding a bit of distortion.
Rise again. Rise again. Rise again. Rise again.
And then I added a cabinator, which is the amp, which you also have that in Ableton.
Rise again. Rise again. Rise again. Rise again. Rise again. Rise again.
It kind of makes the sound feel like really swirly and it kind of like surrounding you rather than just like moving in one direction. Notice especially at this part. Let me loop this and notice there's a bit of delay on the sound, right? I will turn it on and off, these three filters.
Rise again. Rise again. Rise again. Rise again. Rise again. Rise again.
Sound so much nicer, I love it. This still sounded really harsh, I don't know if you noticed that. So I added a plugin called Rezo. And essentially it's just removing these two frequencies whenever they're playing. So because the sound is swirling all over the place, the frequencies are moving, I don't want these frequencies to be moved at all times. I only want them to be removed when they are playing.
Rise again. Rise again. Rise again. Rise again.
It just makes things sound smoother. I kind of get rid of that distortion on the sound. So point number 5 is polishing your vocals and then adding effects to make it swirl around and much more interesting. But you might still think to yourself, oh, all of these tips are amazing, but my mix still feels like it's missing something and it has a lot of issues. And I'm not really sure how, why, and when to use EQ and compression. And don't worry, because it's exactly why I made these 2 videos. So you can learn how to use these tools to get your track sounding clean, powerful, and loud. So go watch them next, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and leave a comment if you want to see anything specific from this track or anything in general, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.